Good afternoon to all the grade 12s. I hope you had a good afternoon and that you are revived to start again with a new section. I am Mrs. Greiling and I will be presenting the topic inflation with you this afternoon. I don't know how many of you were fortunate to watch the news last night and to hear the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, midterm speech regarding the current economic situations. Because when we speak of inflation, it has a direct impact on our daily lives. So yes, inflation is a topic that is really appropriate to each one of us, and it affects our daily living. So today I'm going to try and explain to you not only what inflation is, but what is required from you, especially now in the exams. What must you be able to do regarding inflation? Right, let us start. What is inflation? I want you to sit back and watch the following. Yes, what did you notice? If we look at inflation, the word inflate means to make bigger and bigger. The most appropriate example that we have is in our daily lives when I have to inflate a balloon. When I start, it starts small, and as the time goes by and I inflate it with more air, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But how is that appropriate to our maths? When I speak of inflation, it means that prices are getting bigger and bigger, which of course means things are just getting more and more expensive. Now, what causes inflation? What is the causes to make the prices go up? And as we know, it happens constantly in our lives. The first cause of inflation is the demand pool inflation. This is a type of inflation caused by an increase in demand or in the supply of money. If I could link that to what is currently going on in our country, it means that our country needs money because we need to create jobs. We need to be able to supply people with salaries, and that then puts a demand on the inflation. The second type is the cost push inflation. This is a type of inflation caused by the substantial increase of important goods or services when no suitable alternative is available. Last night in the midterm budget speech, they spoke of our country that has to import so many products, but we are not exporting enough. So we need certain goods and products, and we don't always have it in our own country. And it is products that we need. So in order to fulfill the need in our country, we need to import more. And thus, it causes inflation to increase. The third cause of inflation is built-in inflation. A type of inflation that results from past events and persists in the present. It's called the time value of money. If we look at some countries overseas, example like Italy or mostly Greece last year, in their country they had a big economical problem. And that also is something that caused that country's inflation to increase. So in our country, if, for example, say there was a war, etc., those are also built-in factors that causes inflation to increase. So I hope you've got a bigger picture of the things that influences or causes inflation to increase. This is not important for the exam, but when we study a certain topic, it is good to understand what it means and where it comes from before we can continue. Now, where does inflation fit into our whole picture of our curriculum that we've been studying the whole year? Throughout many of the other lessons that you've listened to, you have heard many of the presenters speaking of Learning Outcome 1, where we work with numbers and operations. Now, when we look at learning outcome 1, inflation also forms part of our numbers and our operations in context, because you must be able to calculate inflation. The second thing is that when we work with inflation, we use certain formula. Now that refers to learning outcome 2, where we also have to be able to use those formula. A little bit later, I'm going to show you the formula, because sometimes they give it in the question papers and sometimes they don't. So it is of vital importance that you must know your formula, because you won't know whether they are going to give these specific formulae or not. Then, most importantly, when I work with inflation, it is data. And we have had now many presenters that spoke about data and data handling. So when we look at inflation, it is also used as a set of data. So what must you be able to do with the data? You should be able to organize it, maybe in a tally or frequency table. You must be able to analyze it by finding the average, maybe the mean, the median, etc. The third thing that you must be able to do with this data is to be able to present it in a graph. But more important, when it is given to you in the form of a graph, you must be able to analyze it and interpret it. And one of the most popular questions that's always asked is that you must be able to describe the trend or the tendency. And to put that in a plain language, it means you must be able to write down that what you see is happening in the graph. But we'll also do some examples of that as well. Did you know that currently our country's inflation is 5.9%? And the only way that you can find out more information about inflation is by reading magazines, reading the newspaper, and also watching television. Because frequently on the news, they refer to these important figures. And as I said in the beginning, it is something that touches our lives daily. Right, we continue to the next one.